one of the big challenges I personally have is understanding if something's not working, if I'm not seeing the adoption that we expected, is it just a matter of timing, right? Does it need more time for the changes that I made to have the impact? Is it the wrong design? Is it a matter of poor execution? Are there some external factors out of my control that have changed the dynamics, and I've got to now factor those? And so, for me, it's really two things. It's moving measurement to Jerry and I are sort of, I think, talking at two different sides of this, and I think they're both relevant, right? One is the upstream leading indicators, and I'm equally focused on, are people actually using the thing that I built, and is it actually delivering the value that we expect that's translating to commercial success? And then if it's not, do we really understand why? Is it timing? Is it design? Is it execution? Or is it external factors?
Welcome back to the Information Week Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Editor Xiao Pierre Ruth. Today's episode, we are talking about dealing with internal metrics that can go off course. Sometimes chasing optimized numbers can lead to less than actual desirable results. What might look good on paper could actually ignore certain context that might be behind the data. So how do CTOs deal with these kinds of situations? For today's episode, we are joined by Aaron Harris, who's a CTO for Sage. Aaron, good to be seeing you today.
Thanks for having me. Great to meet you.
And we're also joined by Jerry Shu, CTO and co-founder for Daylit. Jerry, good to be seeing you as well.
Same here.
Great. Okay. All right. Aaron, Jerry, let's talk about how you deal with optimization that might focus on metrics that can kind of lead things astray from where your actual organization wants to be. First, let's talk about how your organizations might approach IT optimization. What do you aim for in terms of business? What's the faster development? Is it faster development and deployment that you're looking at? Are you trying to get, reduce the mundane tasks? Jerry, why don't you start off with your perspective on what you're looking for that you're hoping that the numbers might at least drive you towards?
That's a great question. So to start, the way we think about it is that what kind of team do we want to be? As a startup, our objective really is to have a team that can repeatedly deliver high quality features on time, right? Like that's kind of the North Star in terms of the engineering structure. With that in mind, the question is like, where do we look at? What kind of metrics do we optimize and measure our performance? I think we're in a very interesting period of time where there is obviously tons of traditional engineering practice, like management practice that exists. But meanwhile, we have this kind of huge, almost like a hit to our head with this kind of all AI innovation. So the question is like, how do you run the traditional, no matter it's different cycle, it's sprint management, it's use a Kanban, and how do you marry that through kind of this kind of AI new wave? So the way for us, we're looking at is actually we took one step back, look at every single element on where can we, instead of like human in the loop, how can we do to an extent in the future is this notion of human on the loop. So we can have this projects flow through different ICs. Everyone kind of now wear like hats end to end, deliver these products, and then also making sure that AI is kind of maximize facilitation throughout the process. So with that in mind, the metrics, again, I think still till today, we're still optimizing. So what I can share is really literally as of today, what we're looking at is how much complexity can an engineer solve within, we run a 1 week and a 2 week kind of alternative spring. So that has become kind of our new little playground. Hey, can we use that single number to look at every single IC? Because we believe the future is IC. The future is the end-to-end management for one engineer that can manage from both from the user story to front-end to back-end to data to infra all in one. So with that, how much complexity can an engineer really deal with within a 1 week framework? So that becomes like our new North Star to achieve our goal.
Aaron, how about on your end?
Yeah, I actually really like the way Jerry framed it. let me talk just tactical about what we're trying to achieve, and then I can talk, strategy. One of the pleasures of being a CTO in a large software company is I'm expected to be the provocateur, so I can sort of really, really challenge and push us to experiment and look at the norms and say why they're wrong. But from a tactical perspective, what we're trying to do with our development squads is exactly as Jerry described. We're trying to increase the speed of the inner loop, if you will, right? How quickly can one developer go through the loop of building, testing, deploying, right, and going back, repeating the cycle. I really like this idea of an individual developer who's able to own the cycle from requirements to operations. One of the things that I think that enables is a development team that's closer and more integrated with the commercial success of the business. And this is really where I think the strategic measurement system needs to be. I'm a big believer in Goodhart's law. And I think so if it's a number, it can be measured. If it can be measured, it'll be abused. Software developers, in my experience, are either cynics or they're paranoids. The best software developers are both. They will often maliciously comply with a measurement system if they think it's stupid. And so the best thing that you can do is tie their work as close as possible to commercial outcomes of the business. OKR systems are good for that, but they've got to flow down to where the developer feels like they have an impact. Where I really stress for developer focus is post-deployment adoption of capabilities. All right, if you think about a business like Jerry's, this is, how much are customers actually processing invoices on your system, and what's the dollar value of those invoices, and how does that translate to collections? Like, that's what actually matters, but you've got to make that connection back to the individual work of the developer.
How easy, and thank you for that, how easy is it to slip into just like developing those metrics without connecting the operations, because you're just kind of like you're trying to move so quickly, you're that focus on delivery, and then you're just kind of losing touch with that. How easy is it to like slip into that mode? Either of you, if you want to lead off with that.
I think it happens most of the time. I think it's more normal than not to have measures that appear superficially to be based on productivity measures. But the problem is you sort of devolve into measures that everybody can understand, including leaders that are outside of the development organization, right? So this is how you end up in measures like lines of code or number of PRs. Like, that's a very kind of easy to understand measure of developer productivity, but it can lead to, this malicious compliance that I talked about, splitting PRs into really small features, token maxing, writing, way more lines of code that are necessary because that's how you're measured. But they're easy to understand. They're easy to sell to the rest of the leadership team. And so therefore, it's easy to fall into this mode of operation.
I would say I can't agree more. And I think on the one hand, you can put like all these metrics around engineering speed, around like number of tickets, around line code, issue solved, number of commits. But those are, it's a system game, right? Like someone, as soon as you come up with the metrics, it's a game to play, which also can be a fun game. But meanwhile, I think what really matters is this notion of like business North Star metrics, right? For, I think, us being kind of a fintech, it's just so important to understand what's the value, what's the end value we're delivering to the clients. For us, we help, businesses run ARs automatically. That means how can we improve DSO? How can we improve customer team efficiency? Remove like the amount of mundane they need to handle day to day. But I think the interesting thing is, on the one hand, you can just take that, hey, business go. Now everyone's performance is measured by that. I think the real challenge is a lot of time, these numbers are to an extent lagging indicators. So I think as kind of a business leader or eng leader, if you want to use kind of more business metrics to really measure team performance, I think the key to that is really identify what is actually the leading indicator to the business metrics you want to optimize for. So that's a field that we spend a lot of time and energy on.
So who should be included in the room, somebody who is outside of IT? Who should be in the room when you're developing these kind of internal metrics or to vet the results from optimization to kind of get that grounding that you're looking for?
I would argue the P&L owner needs to be in the room. And that can be a product manager, right? It could be a managing director of a division, and maybe it's his or her proxy that's there. But I think a common mistake that CTOs make, and I'm certainly guilty of that earlier in my career, probably still today, is not linking sort of engineering design and objectives to commercial, not just commercial outcomes, but commercial strategy, right? So a really good example of that is having a good grasp of how a product is priced, how it's taken to market, how it's sold, how customers pay for it. Like all of that has to be factored into the architecture, the design, the user experience. And without that deep understanding, there's always going to be a disconnect between what product designs and delivers and actually what the commercial business needs to be successful. So I think the one person who always needs to be in the room is whoever owns the P&L for the business that this developer or this squad is supporting.
I think totally. And to an extent, I would say like the pricing, the initial user touch, the discovery phase, including kind of the downstream CS, customer success, to an extent, they are all part of the product, right? And if you think about eng team, it's not about the product team, the engineering team come up with the product. The product, the whole thing, the whole experience, including making the payment, that is part of the product. So with that, I think obviously different business unit, whoever have participate in this product design phase should join. I would say customer should definitely have a say. Obviously, probably not directly in the meeting room, but in a different form. And then I would say, as of today, last and not least, definitely agents should be in the room. Not necessarily will be active saying anything, but at least audit the conversation. And a lot of time, you'll be surprised how many things, as people have experience, can put weights on information, but there are just blind spots that sometimes agent can, hey, did you think about this? And sometimes it's a great idea.
So let's talk a little further about getting things back on track. Recovering from a plan that's been put in place, but it's actually showing that it's actually not improving business operations, and that could be, there could be disruptions that are coming up. It could be that it's, the numbers are actually putting out unrealistic goals. What are the ways that you kind of try to get things back aligned in a way that it can move the business forward?
One thing maybe I can share is around one big challenge where we have team reviews and conversations on how can we improve the general process. One thing a lot of kind of our teammates kind of share is there's this notion of lack of communication. Seems like everyone, because the speed is so fast right now, everyone is in their silo, everyone is in their own kind of stream of work. How can we share this information across the team more efficiently? At the very beginning, I was very puzzled because I look at my calendar, it's talking to everyone all the time. What more communication do you want? But then if you really kind of sit back, it's not about, in terms of for example, measure communication, this flow of information becomes so important. It is not about measuring how many whiteboard sessions you've had. It's not about measuring how many team meetings people put on the calendar. Is rather, when someone needs a piece of information, how quickly can that information be passed to that person? Which again, from the metrics perspective, is so hard to measure, but that is something I think we are designed now, different process from the team operation perspective, and as well as from kind of a team knowledge center, access to information perspective. How can you really speed up process like this, that becomes kind of a lot of fun play these days.
Yeah, I think that's super, super critical. And I think it needs to carry through the post-deployment of a solution or the post-launch of a product. It's really one of these things that I harp on. The problem with traditional software as a service business models is you're chasing a roadmap, you're chasing features, whatever the sales team needs to close the next deal. If you instead are on a more of a consumption or activity driven business model, then your focus moves to adoption, and the deployment of a solution or the launch of a product is really just the beginning of the overall effort to build the business. And it shifts the focus to, okay, is the thing that we built the right thing? Did we design it in a way where we've got, efficient, scalable sales? Is it something that customers are telling us with their pocketbooks that is good enough for them to pay for, or not? And I think one of the big challenges I personally have is understanding if something's not working, if I'm not seeing the adoption that we expected. Is it just a matter of timing, right? Does it need more time for the changes that I made to have the impact? Is it the wrong design? Is it a matter of poor execution? Are there some external factors out of my control that have changed the dynamics, and I've got to now factor those? And so, for me, it's really two things. It's moving measurement to Jerry and I are sort of, I think, talking at two different sides of this, and I think they're both relevant, right? One is the upstream leading indicators, and I'm equally focused on, are people actually using the thing that I built, and is it actually delivering the value that we expect that's translating to commercial success? And then if it's not, do we really understand why? Is it timing? Is it design? Is it execution? Or is it external factors?
All wonderful insights, and appreciate you both on that. For those who are listening, I have taken out the Ninja Turtles game screen, which means now it is time for Questionable Ideas, our tabletop exercise where our panelists will serve as interim executives with the fictional company called Questionable Ideas. These scenarios were not shared in advance with the panel, and they may be a bit over the top, but they do relate to today's topic. Our guests are not responsible for the presence of goblins, kobolds, or gremlins in these scenarios. That, as always, is entirely my fault. So once again, Jerry, Aaron, ground rules are pretty simple. You both will be serving as a interim CTOs for Questionable Ideas with the same rights, powers, and privileges that you would expect to have, including calling in outside help if necessary. You may need to call National Guard, NASA, depending on what the kobolds and gremlins get up to. Are you ready for this, gentlemen?
Yeah. I'm kind of nervous about it.
Okay, great. All right, here we go. Scenario one, gambling with the data. The chief operations officer at Questionable Ideas comes to you confused. The goblins developed a communications platform for cross-team collaborations that spread quickly across the company, and metrics show that the teams are communicating with each other at exceptionally high rates. The problem is productivity and delivery has plummeted. It seems that goblins included some casino-like slot machine features on the platform to maintain engagement, which now has many team members hooked on using it. The marketing team thinks this platform could be developed further into a product the company could sell because of the engagement rates. Do you continue to use this platform internally as is? Do you make changes to it, or do you start over with something else?
Wow, I'm questioning my career decisions. One thing I would start with on this is that goblins are going to be goblins, and I get into this fight a lot here at Sage, and with other leaders. There's, I think, a belief that you can train behavior into people. There's a belief that you can, sort of have culture seminars, and that's going to result in people behaving differently, and maybe it has some impact. But I think you get the behavior that you design into a system. whether it's org structure, operating model, incentives, tools, et cetera. So if you're creating something to drive engagement for goblins are going to be goblins, right? And they're going to really engage, perhaps to the detriment of what you were really trying to accomplish. And so I sort of start with this belief that humans are going to be humans, and human nature is going to prevail, and it's going to prevail in the system, right, in which it's encapsulated. So you're going to get predictable outcomes, and so this is entirely predictable. I'm not telling you I know how to solve it, but I can tell you what's happening is pretty predictable.
I think that's totally true, and sometimes I kind of joke with my co-founder. On the one hand, we have so much faith in humanity. We think there's so much one can do and can change, can learn. On the other hand, it's just so impossible to change human beings. Humans are, on the other hand, impossible to change. So I definitely agree with that. In terms of since we are now running this company, I see kind of two opportunity challenges. Probably can discuss both. On the one hand, this notion of it's a piece of gamification. In this case, it's a gambling feature, and it tanks the team productivity, right? That's just facts which we need to solve. Kind of funny enough, this is one crazy idea. Just throw it out there. Maybe someone audience can pick it up and develop a startup out of it. Is this notion of gambling intrinsically creates issue, but can it be productive? A crazy idea is, how about gambling on number of productivity issues we are going to have next month? If the team, can use the kind of the crowd's smartness to figure out the number of or area of where the issue gonna happen, they will place their bet. If that is a great indicator of where things can go wrong, now we can use that information to help improve the company. So there's probably some gamification places we can play with that. And then the second part is really, I also like that when the marketing department spot this can be potentially a business opportunity. I think as a startup, I think for us, if one thing we need to do is really stay focused. So I would say the initial thought is the default no, unless prove otherwise. We'd love to encourage the team, hey, why don't you spend the weekend? We can run a hackathon, develop it more. But business hour, we have one single focus. Unless we change the course of route, we stay on our course. But hey, everyone, off hours, go and have fun.
I really love the turning it into something positive, because I don't think you can take it away. That's one of the lessons I've learned over the years is, once you provide an entitlement, or once you provide something that's a benefit, it becomes an entitlement. I mean, something as simple as swapping out the snacks in the kitchen for something that's maybe less expensive, right? Or you take away somebody's healthy snack choice, that could lead to a revolution amongst the team. And it sounds like if you take this gambling away from the gremlins, right, you're going to have a huge revolt on your hands. So I love this idea of turning it into something productive. I mean, how about the idea of letting them gamble over which solution to a customer problem turns out to be the winner, right? In an A/B testing scenario world, right? Encourage them to explore, more scenarios in an A/B testing scenario situation, and allow them to gamble on which one is actually the winner. I'm sort of assuming here that goblins are subject to different laws, and workplace laws don't apply to them the same way they do to humans. So I'm
not much applies to the goblins.
Gambling without any sort of OSHA worries here. But I love this idea of turning it into something that's actually productive, because I don't think you can take away something that they love without you have it. You don't want the gremlins, in this case, revolting.
Well, the goblins definitely are always revolting, but they definitely
goblins or gremlins.
The goblins for the first scenario. We'll get to the gremlins. The goblins are definitely loving the fact that they continue with their surprise mechanics and gamification in some way, shape, or form. Okay. All right. Scenario 2. all gas, no brakes. The innovation teams at Questionable Ideas are trying to adopt a development cycle that leads to faster execution. And the Gremlins have come up with a process that fosters near light speed delivery. The CEO and operations are thrilled at how fast the company can move, with eyes on obliterating the competition with how quickly everything moves. Upon closer inspection, you see that the Gremlin team achieved these results by eliminating deep vetting by security and compliance. And you have a feeling some of the products that they're delivering will flout privacy and other ethics along the way and will lead to headaches for the company's attorneys. The Gremlins claim they ran everything by off-the-shelf security software and everyone else is overreacting. Do you let the Gremlins continue to lead the innovation effort their way? Do you alter the way they're working? Or do you replace them entirely?
I was thinking about the first two options, and I heard the third option to replace them all. But I would say kind of very similar to this scenario. I think it's very hard to take away things, right? If you have something, especially if it's adding value, especially if you see market traction, I would say, again, look at the good side and see how we make that bigger, and meanwhile kind of control the downside risk. In terms of the security and privacy, I think there is, on the one hand, kind of table stakes that they just have to check all the boxes. And then to make that kind of more interactive or embedded into their process, again, we're in the AI era, we have from cloud scale to agent skills, we can distill into their process. Hey, you know what? Do everything you need to do, but these agents have to approve everything you develop. And then us on the security team side really kind of make sure like agents check things that really need to pass. I would say that's one hand. But on the other hand, I'm actually so super excited. Like if they can create something that really have user adoption and assume it's like real user adoption, at least like early stage, let's look into it. Let's see what opportunities are there. If there's something, let's invest.
I'm sort of taken by this idea that the CTO, who is responsible for development and delivery, is that beholden to the rest of the leadership team, and is willing to subvert what that CTO knows is the right way to build a product to cater to that leadership team. I think it's one of the hardest things about being a technology leader in a business is your ability to influence the rest of the leadership team. I had a conversation with an engineering leader here just a couple of days ago who was worried that he had been able to allocate resources to doing some raw research on some AI approaches that we knew in the long term would yield great benefits for us. But because of the commercial urgency in the business, he was having to devote all of his team to the more near-term roadmap capabilities. And I just had to remind him, like, you own the roadmap, you own the resources, you own the commitments. You've got accountability for delivering to those commitments, but fundamentally, you've been entrusted with these resources, right? And you've been given an objective to accomplish with those resources. If you believe that the best result for the business is to allocate 20% of their time to doing research, then you should do that, right? You have the power to do that. And I think it's it's an easy trap for engineering leaders to fall into as they progress throughout their careers. On the one hand, they sort of develop this deep understanding of the commercial realities of business, which is awesome, right? Because it's so easy for engineers to not have that. But then on the other hand, they sort of forget that at the end of the day, they've been entrusted with these resources to deliver against an objective. And leadership should have this "I trust you till I don't" mentality that gives this leader the freedom to execute the way they believe they should. If it's not producing the right results for the business, then they need to change the leadership. But until then, you've got to give them space to execute.
Well, the Gremlins for sure definitely love to execute regardless of rules, ethics, or anything else, because they like to see things go as far as they can until they break. And then they say, hey, oops, anyway, we created something cool. Okay, on to the last scenario. No friction to see here. Questionable Ideas is struggling to find and retain the IT professionals it needs across a number of disciplines. It is a crucial time for the company, and the CEO is worried that team leaders are focusing on the wrong needs. The AI assistant the company uses advises adopting the style and approach of the Cobalt team. The Cobalts have extremely low turnover, see steady delivery on products, and there's almost no friction within the team. The CEO wants the Cobalt development cycle adopted across the entire organization, but it soon becomes clear that the Cobalt team functions on draconian, monolithic methods that rewards compliance over creativity. Operations says what the Cobalt team delivers is often very stable and reliable, but rarely dynamic or forward-looking. Do you adopt the Cobalt methodology? Do you modify it? Or do you explore different options?
I think a lot of this comes down to the commercial realities that business is in. If you're a business that is sort of coasting on cash cow products that are stable, that are high margin, that have low churn, and that what you really need to do is to have a perfectly reliable, predictable roadmap that is in no way disruptive, then maybe the Cobalt way is the right way. But if, on the other hand, you're in a highly dynamic market, you've got, your investors have given you more freedom in how to operate, and you're in sort of an innovate or die, or innovate or disrupt or be disrupted situation, then the Cobalt way is the wrong way. And I'll sort of come back to, you're the leader until they don't trust you anymore and they fire you. So you build a team that I think is the team suitable to the commercial realities of the business. Now, we're a big business at Sage. We've got lots of products and lots of markets, and many of our products are actually incredibly profitable, stable, low churn products. But we've got a number of other products that are driving the bulk of the growth of the business. They're in very dynamic markets. We have to maintain the ability to disrupt and innovate in those teams. And this Cobalt culture will just not work there.
I can't agree more. I think you, as the engineer leader or the org leader, you are trusted with the resources to really execute like your vision, right? Like you are trusted for your vision. So I think on the one hand, it's really anyone, when there's a problem, one needs to properly address it, right? So your current model is not working, go find ways to fix it. But on the other hand, really is you as the leaders, the founders, the kind of the head of operators, really is like, what is the vision you want to drive this business towards? Sure, there are so many stakeholders you need to make sure everyone is taken care of. But also, at the end of the day, you take this job. You take this job for a reason, right? Like there's a drive behind. Is this drive to really create something like truly innovative and change the way that people live their day to day for a better society? Or is your vision on creating something that's stable, hundreds, if not like hundreds of thousands of people can benefit and use it in a more stable way? Like that. What you want to achieve in the end, I think really drives like what kind of operator model or engineering practice, that all kind of comes secondary. You need to be so clear on what you and your team want to do. I think then as in for practice, again, there are so many options either off the shelf or you can create one on your own, but that comes serve the purpose of like end of the day, what do you want to bring to the world?
Right. All right. Well, you've definitely succeeded at helping Questionable Ideas continue to bring its nonsense to the world. So listen, Aaron, Jerry, thank you so much for making it through the tabletop scenarios and being part of the podcast today. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.